gentlemen, that is to say, Nigel Frith, Renaissance man, scholar, master of many arts, and William Mann, his long-time archivist. I just thought, by way of introduction, to sort of focus on the issues we perhaps need to visit, I'll give you a couple of quotes. One from Shakespeare, which you'll probably be familiar with. "The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones." And the second, by contrast, is from a rock musical fame. "I'm gonna live forever. Baby, remember my name." Now, Nigel, I imagine that it wasn't so many years ago that you had no idea of developing an archive, despite the fact that you had a career in which you met many interesting people, wrote many interesting books, painted many interesting pictures, and was altogether an interesting person. But how did it come about that we now have a Nigel Frith archive?
Well, it was a lucky stroke because Will, who is an old friend, had always been around Oxford and the Bodleian Library, so I knew about all that. But he was developing into being an expert on doing archives and was studying a course at London City.
That's right.
London City, and he had to do a kind of term paper type thing, as I would call it, which was a special display of his powers. And it was you suggested, what about if he used you as a guinea pig and did your archive? And I didn't really know what an archive was, so that's how we started, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that presumably accords with your memory. You
great.
were, of course, a historian at that stage.
Yeah, well, that was my undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
That was my interest. But I mean, I'd been working at the Bodleian Library for a while, and then decided to do the masters to develop the career. And it was during that I realised that I was much more interested in archives than librarianship, and hence the dissertation.
Because it's a big developing area of library studies, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess, yes. I mean, so the course I was doing was information management in the cultural sector. So information management, sort of an umbrella term for many different things, but that was a bit more focused on library studies. And an archives kind of a slightly distinct area,
But you went on to get a further qualification in the archiving.
That's subsequently I then did the archive qualification at UCL. Yeah.
So you are actually extremely well qualified.
I have the appropriate qualifications.
I imagine you have to be extremely well qualified to cope with the demands of an archive of this complexity.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot going on. I mean, in your archive.
Yes.
And, I mean, we then.
It was a monster to deal with, wasn't it?
Well, it was sort of. I suppose it went in stages, isn't it? So that first cataloguing project was for my dissertation as a case study. Yes, which you
end up, you see, with a many-page document.
Yes.
All.
So with the idea, I mean, the dissertation particularly was about personal archives. So working with individuals or. And how, I mean, I was talking about how personal archives fit into the wider kind of archive sector, because because archives traditionally tend to be the archives of organisations and institutions tend to be forefronted in archive kind of thinking. So personal archives are slightly more a subset.
Yes, fair enough.
You see the description on here, the Nigel Frith archive, and it says level of description fonds.
Fonds.
Yeah. Yes. What's fonds?
Well, fonds is the sort of the jargon for that's traditionally what an archive is known as. So that's the entirety of it is considered the fonds. So it would be the fonds of Nigel Frith is
And that
so
would
it's
be
another word for
print papers and the handwritten papers and pictures and photographs.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of, as with many things, there's a fluidity to people, how people conceive of things, but it's essentially everything that you've created or collected or retained, that you have retained, that you haven't disposed of, so that would be your working papers,
But as you went through this process, Nigel, with Will, it seems to have dawned on you that this archiving might have significance perhaps even beyond your own life, because you are the last in a very distinguished line of artists. Are you not?
Well, I am the last of a line of artists, yes, of sort of 5 generations of sculptors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And perhaps you felt that it was, they could be included in the whole lengthy perspective.
Yes, indeed.
That has become the archive.
Yes, there's a section here, isn't there, where you deal with the sort of family history and things.
Yes, it's it would be the papers of your forebears. But I guess, technically speaking, you would say that this is, I guess now approaching this this archive, you might consider it to be the Frith archive as opposed to the Nigel Frith archive, because there is material that relates, that has come from his
L,
grandfather and father.
Category L, autobiographical work and papers relating to the Frith family, 1919 to the present.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be the Fonds with all about the family background.
It is, but that's a relatively small.
Is it?
Well, there wasn't. I can't. Well, we'll have to look. But if memory serves, there wasn't. In comparison to all of your material that you produced, that was a relatively small file.
But Nigel, in addition to creating...
There's all this, W.S. Frith, pamphlet, W.S. Frith, E.S. Frith, restoration of stone carving and sculpture by
true.
E.S. Frith,
That's true, but actually those, now I remember, but those are things that you'd produced about your family, wasn't it?
Yes.
They weren't actually things that your family, like your grandfather. So if your grandfather... So for instance, I think, which isn't in there because I didn't see it, didn't know about it at the time, but I think you subsequently found a sort of prospectus that the firm had, the Frith.
No, I think that's it. I think that's it.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
So
this was a while ago.
Yes, Nigel Frith, apart from the family perspective, which we've uncovered there, I think anybody studying your work in its various forms might come to the conclusion that you're on a mission. Your work is focused on reviving certain traditional and classical patterns and so forth.
True.
And the distinct impression one gets is that whether you're with us any longer or not, you want this cause to be progressed.
Yes.
Could you give us some idea of what you have in mind as far as that goes? We're talking about...
the painting and all that, yeah.
But also your writings in particular, and indeed your most recent work,
yes,
Troilus, which in fact encapsulates, particularly in the foreword,
yes,
your whole philosophy, I would say.
It does. It's strange the way that's turned out, and you're the one who made me write it, so I'm very grateful.
We needn't go into that. But what I'm getting at is the archive which you're creating and the website that accompanies it.
Now, the website, I'm glad you mentioned that,
is a vehicle for ensuring that this goes forward.
You see, because as Will explained to me when he started, that the printed book, the published books, are not really part of the archive, are they? Because they've been published and they're in the public domain, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So those books are always there. You know, you look them up on Google, and you can buy one for $2.75. You know, which is a snip.
Great value.
But
Great value.
But just the typescripts that haven't been published, the handwritten letters and things like that, that is all fonts, isn't it?
Yeah, those are the unique, the unique documents that make.
Similarly with photographs, and similarly with paintings, you see.
Yeah.
But the thing about paintings is, and photographs, they're only in one place, and manuscripts, they're only in one place so that whoever's got them is, anybody who wants to get in contact with them has got to go to where they are.
Yeah.
But the thing about having a website, as you mentioned, is that it can all go up on the website and people can just go in and
yes.
And so that say if you're a family and you want to keep family photos, you put them on a website. People can look at them freely all over the place.
And that is, of course, part of your métier, isn't it? Really.
Yes. Well, I mean, you wanted to display your work. I mean, and as you say, you all your work is in your house, and obviously you don't want people to come and the world to come into your house. So yes, the website was a means of providing access to the archive and to your body of work.
Yes.
So that required digitizing a lot of stuff to go online.
But Nigel, could you just give us a flavour of this cause that you feel the archive is going to be perpetuating? What are the salient features of your life's work?
Well, it's a bit difficult.
Well, we know.
Yes, but I mean,
I know it's difficult to encapsulate it.
I mean, yes.
But the classical world is obviously a source of strength for you.
Yes.
And you have written in the classical Homeric style.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean,
but beyond that,
I mean, as far as my own particular case goes, I think it's something that writing that forward, which you made me do, has sort of crystallised, and that is that the traditional ways of doing things were always present in art, in the poetry, painting, and everything, right up until about the 60s. I mean, and once they got stuck in, and you had this revolution of the 60s, they tended to get rid of everything and start afresh, and to have and rather to despise the traditional way of doing everything, like love poetry or heroic epics or something like that, So they all went by the board. I have always wanted to write in that old style, which is so rich and varied, and produces much greater art than anyone has ever produced since the 60s, and so I stuck to that. Now, you can't publish that sort of stuff, particularly nowadays, so how do you record it in the hope that people might find it later? This is the perfect way of doing it. So that really, if you ask for, what's my aim is to get these traditions going again.
Now, Nigel obviously has a very particular set of requirements for his archive. I imagine that every client that you have poses a unique problem.
Yes.
Because, each individual is unique with a unique set of requirements, unique set of records. How do you? What's your general approach to that?
I mean, every client is unique and will have different needs, and you have to. You find out what the client has and what they want to do with it. I mean, there are any number of approaches or tasks that can be undertaken. But essentially, what you're trying to get your client to get control over their material, and then to help them make sure that the stuff that they care about is accessible and safe, is preserved, and obviously increasingly that involves digital stuff as well. So I mean it's almost. There are innumerable things that it can do, but it's essentially enabling clients to make sure that they can keep the stuff that they treasure and pass it on to their children and grandchildren.
And so, Nigel, for you, having, as I say, gone through this journey with William Mann, I mean, do you feel that it has been a fulfilling experience?
Oh, amazing.
In terms of your aims
Yeah.
and your enjoyment.
Absolutely.
And perhaps you've discovered things about yourself which
Well,
you hadn't fully
I
appreciated.
don't know about that. I'm not really interested in all that, but it has been amazing. It's just been tremendous to get on top of it all and see how it can be developed through the website.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was the interesting thing about working with the creators of archives, which isn't something that tends to happen with archivists, because they tend to be in archives or records offices or institutions, and papers come to them from the creators, which they then, so there's not necessarily a kind of a working relationship between the archivist and the creator of the archive.
Yeah.
So actually this is relatively unusual situation where you have an archivist working with the individual who's created the archive, and in the process of doing it, and this is a good example, it can spark further creativity just by going through the process of archiving, because actually the dynamic creates further, much like this video.
It speaks volumes for the personal touch.
Right.
But for a sort of wider perspective, I'd like to end with a quotation. In fact, it's the last few words of the book by Richard Ovenden, the Bodley's librarian, his book called Burning the Books. And it goes as follows: archives take the long view of civilization in a world that is currently taking a short-term view. We ignore their importance at our peril. Gentlemen, do you concur?
Completely.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.